What if some of the biggest turning points in history were kept secret for decades, only revealed through official documents and investigations? Today, we're diving into 8 real events that changed everything, from politics to science, now fully backed by declassified records. Stick around. These stories will surprise you. Watergate Scandal, 1972 to 1974. The Watergate Scandal, an investigation that exposed corruption at the highest level of government. On June 17, 1972, 5 men were caught breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. Armed with bugging devices, cameras, and cash, their goal was to wiretap phones and steal documents for Nixon's re-election campaign. The burglars, led by ex-CIA officer James McCord and including Cuban exiles, were linked to the committee to re-elect the president, run by operatives G. Gordon Liddy and E. Howard Hunt. The White House called it a third-rate burglary and denied involvement. But a massive cover-up was underway. Hush money, totaling hundreds of thousands, was paid to silence the burglars. Nixon even ordered the CIA to block the FBI investigation, falsely citing national security. Washington Post reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, guided by secret source Deep Throat, later revealed as FBI's Mark Felt, traced the money to Creep's illegal slush fund. In 1973, Senate hearings and testimony from White House counsel John Dean exposed the administration's role. The bombshell: Nixon secretly taped Oval Office conversations. The smoking gun tape from June 23, 1972, caught him ordering the CIA to obstruct the FBI. After the Supreme Court forced release of the tapes and the Saturday Night Massacre, where Nixon fired Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox, public outrage exploded. The House prepared impeachment for obstruction of justice and abuse of power. Facing removal, Nixon resigned on August 9, 1974, the only U.S. president ever to do so. Over 40 officials were convicted. Many went to prison. Gerald Ford's pardon of Nixon fueled lasting controversy. Declassified files later revealed broader abuses: enemies lists, illegal wiretaps, and dirty tricks against opponents. Watergate destroyed public trust and sparked major reforms in campaign finance and government ethics. What began as widespread suspicion became one of the most documented political scandals in U.S. history, reinforcing the principle that no one is above the law. Big tobacco cancer cover-up, 1950s to 1990s, a decades-long corporate effort to dispute and delay public awareness of smoking's health risks. By the early 1950s, companies including Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds, and Brown and Williamson possessed internal scientific evidence proving cigarettes caused lung cancer and were powerfully addictive. Rather than warn consumers, executives chose to conceal the truth and orchestrate a decades-long deception. In December 1953, top CEOs met secretly at New York's Plaza Hotel and agreed on a unified strategy: publicly deny any danger while funding efforts to undermine legitimate research. They published the frank statement in hundreds of newspapers, claiming no proof existed that smoking harmed health, and created the Tobacco Industry Research Committee, a front group to produce biased studies and create public doubt. They invested billions in advertising that portrayed smoking as glamorous and safe, often featuring doctors endorsing brands with slogans like "More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette." They deliberately increased nicotine levels to heighten addiction, while insisting publicly that nicotine was not addictive. They targeted youth with cartoon characters like Joe Camel, later shown to be more recognizable to children than Mickey Mouse. In 1994, 7 CEOs testified under oath before Congress, unanimously denying nicotine's addictiveness, despite internal documents comparing it to cocaine. Whistleblowers in the 1990s leaked thousands of secret memos confirming the industry knew the risk since the 1950s. In 1998, the Master Settlement Agreement forced them to pay $206 billion, admit deception, end youth marketing, and release incriminating files. Internal documents later revealed how profits were prioritized over transparency, a landmark case in corporate accountability and public health reform. Tuskegee Syphilis Study, 1932 to 1972, a long-running U.S. government medical study that violated ethical standards and informed consent. In 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service launched a study in Macon County, Alabama, recruiting 600 poor black sharecroppers with promises of free health care, meals, and burial insurance. Of them, 399 had syphilis. The rest were controls. The true aim? Observe the disease's natural progression untreated, even as it ravaged bodies. Doctors deceived participants, calling it bad blood treatment, giving fake remedies like aspirin while withholding real care. By the 1940s, penicillin became the standard cure, but it was deliberately denied. Men endured blindness, insanity, paralysis, and death. Wives and children contracted congenital syphilis. The study continued unchecked, with autopsies required for free burials to collect data. In 1972, whistleblower Peter Buxton leaked details to the Associated Press, sparking outrage and ending the experiment. Survivors sued and received $10 million in settlements. President Clinton issued a formal apology in 1997, acknowledging the racist betrayal. Declassified records confirmed the deliberate harm for science. The case permanently reshaped medical ethics, research oversight, and public trust in healthcare institutions. Gulf of Tonkin Incident, 1964. The disputed events that led to a major escalation of U.S. involvement in Vietnam. On August 2, 1964, the USS Maddox, conducting intelligence gathering in the Gulf of Tonkin while supporting South Vietnamese raids, exchanged fire with 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats after they attacked. The Maddox and U.S. aircraft damaged the boats. No U.S. casualties. 2 days later, on August 4th, the Maddox and USS Turner Joy reported a second attack. Torpedoes and gunfire in bad weather. President Lyndon Johnson addressed the nation, calling both unprovoked and ordering retaliatory airstrikes on North Vietnam. Congress swiftly passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution on August 7th, granting Johnson broad authority to escalate military action without a formal declaration of war. Truth emerged later. The first incident was provoked amid covert operations. The second never happened. Radar ghosts and misinterpretations, as declassified NSA documents in 2005 confirmed. Officials exaggerated reports to justify escalation. The resolution enabled massive U.S. troop buildup, leading to over 58,000 American deaths and millions of Vietnamese casualties in the divisive war. Later reviews and declassified records raised serious questions about how the incident was presented to the public. MK-Ultra, CIA's mind control, 1953 to 1973. A secret Cold War-era CIA research program focused on interrogation and behavioral studies. From 1953 to 1973, the CIA ran over 150 subprojects under MK-Ultra, spending millions to develop techniques for interrogation, behavior modification, and creating programmable agents. Methods included dosing unwitting Americans with LSD and other hallucinogens, electroshock, sensory deprivation, hypnosis, and psychological torture, often in universities, hospitals, prisons, and hidden safe houses. Victims ranged from prisoners to mental patients to ordinary citizens. Many suffered permanent damage. One notable case: CIA scientist Frank Olson was secretly drugged with LSD and days later fell to his death from a hotel window. The program targeted vulnerable groups and even operated brothels with two-way mirrors to observe drug effects on sexual behavior. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered most records destroyed to avoid exposure. Surviving documents surfaced through FOIA requests and the 1975 Church Committee hearings, confirming the program's existence and horrors. Canadian victims received settlements. U.S. lawsuits followed. President Clinton apologized in 1995 for the unethical experiments. Subsequent investigations revealed serious ethical violations and led to lasting reforms in intelligence oversight. Iran-Contra Affair, 1985 to 1987, a covert foreign policy operation involving arms sales and unauthorized funding activities. In the mid-1980s, despite a U.S. arms embargo on Iran during the Iran-Iraq War and the ongoing Tehran hostage crisis aftermath, National Security Council staff secretly sold millions in weapons to Iran. The goal? Secure the release of American hostages held by Hezbollah in Lebanon. Several hostages were freed, but more were taken. Profits from the sales, overpriced by middlemen, were diverted to fund Nicaragua's Contra rebels fighting the leftist Sandinista government. Congress had explicitly banned such aid through the Boland Amendment after revelations of CYA mining harbors and supporting paramilitary actions. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, working under NSC advisor John Poindexter and with CIA involvement, orchestrated the diversion using private networks and offshore accounts. Some investigations later raised concerns about links between Contra supply networks and illicit activities that contributed to domestic drug problems in the U.S. Exposed in November 1986 by a Lebanese newspaper, congressional hearings followed. North admitted shredding documents but defended it as patriotic. 14 officials were charged, 11 convicted, many later pardoned by President Bush Sr. Reagan claimed no knowledge of the diversion. Declassified records confirmed the operation, violated laws and policy. Congressional investigations later confirmed violations of U.S. law and executive oversight procedures. Operation Paperclip, 1945 to 1959, a secret U.S. program that brought former German scientists to America during the Cold War, prioritizing technological competition over past affiliations. As World War II ended, the U.S. and Soviet Union raced to secure advanced German rocket technology. The Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency launched Paperclip, relocating more than 1,600 scientists, engineers, and technicians to the United States. Many of those recruited had previously worked for the German wartime regime. The most prominent figure was Wernher von Braun, the lead designer behind the V-2 rocket, an early long-range missile system. The V-2 program relied on production facilities built underground, where harsh working conditions caused widespread suffering and loss of life among forced laborers. U.S. officials altered records, minimized past involvement, and granted citizenship. Von Braun later became a central figure in America's space program, directing NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. His Saturn V-C rocket powered the Apollo missions, ultimately carrying astronauts to the moon in 1969. Declassified records released decades later revealed the full scope of the program and the ethical compromises made in the name of national security and technological leadership. Some individuals later faced investigation, and a small number were removed from the country years afterward. Operation Paperclip accelerated U.S. rocket development, but left lasting debates about the moral cost of progress during the early Cold War. NSA mass surveillance. Edward Snowden, 2013. The disclosure of large-scale government surveillance programs through leaked classified documents. Before 2013, claims of bulk U.S. citizen surveillance were dismissed as paranoid conspiracy theories. In June 2013, former NSA contractor Edward Snowden leaked thousands of classified documents to journalists, revealing the agency's vast, warrantless spying operations. The PRISM program gave the NSA direct access to user data from tech giants including Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, and Yahoo, emails, chats, videos, files. Another program, Upstream, tapped internet backbone cables to collect communications in bulk. The NSA collected metadata on virtually every American's phone calls, numbers, durations, locations, under Section 215 of the Patriot Act, without individual warrants. Foreign leaders, including allies like Germany's Angela Merkel, were targeted. Snowden's disclosures, published by The Guardian and Washington Post, showed officials had repeatedly denied the programs existed, even under oath. Courts later ruled parts unconstitutional. Congress passed limited reforms in 2015 with the USA Freedom Act. Snowden, charged under the Espionage Act, lives in exile in Russia. The revelation sparked global debates on privacy, security, and government transparency. Subsequent court rulings and reforms confirmed the scope of the programs. That's the 8 stories that history finally brought to light. Which one surprised you the most or made you think twice? Drop it in the comments. If you love uncovering real history like this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching. More documented stories coming soon. See you there.